Welcome to Porch Play Chat, sponsored by the American Association for the Child's Right to Play, or more affectionately titled IPA USA. IPA USA is the USA affiliate of the International Play Association. And as part of our efforts to promote play, we've introduced Porch Play Chats, and we're closing in on 300 of them that are available to you for free, both on our YouTube channel and if you're a friend, a follower, a subscriber to any of those social media things, magically, every Monday morning, a new Porch Play Chat will appear in your feed. I'm Deb Lawrence, and I'm president of IPA USA. And the sticker up in the corner of this slide is to celebrate the International Day of Play. So you're probably going to hear this in January of 2026. So you can start planning for the International Day of Play, which is every year on June 11th. And that is the UN International Day of Play that yesterday was celebrated worldwide. And so we hope you'll start planning on how can we integrate more child-led play into our day on June 11th of 2026. So start planning right now. With me on the porch today is Tamara Jouval, and Tamara comes to us from Tamara's Play Studio, which she began in 2004 when she began this home-based after-school child care program serving the children in her neighborhood. Tamara has this amazing approach, and she lives in this amazing place where her backyard kind of goes up a hill into nature, and it's just beautiful. She defines herself as a fun facilitator with no obligation to teach curriculum, which don't we love to hear that? And in the way that she's processed all these experiences that she makes accessible to children in her backyard. And so she also has this curiosity about neuropsychology, kids and nature. And so one of the things that has led her to understand the importance of child-led play is that she sees the benefits and she sees the value and she sees the interest and the growth of the kids that she's with. With us on the porch also is Lauren. And Lauren specializes in nervous system informed educational support, helping children rediscover safety, confidence, and joy in learning. Her approach, so Laura, I have trauma certification. So again, here we go again.
Yes.
Her approach is co-regulation, trauma-informed care, and deep emotional attunement. And she partners with each learner to build a path that feels both possible and empowering and free from boxed curriculum pressure or performative success. Laura is graduating today with her degree in early childhood education and starting her master's very quickly in educational neuroscience through Butler University. And her work blends these evidence-based practices with relational depth, centering every session around the nervous system's readiness to learn and the child's own pace and process. Oh, my goodness, truly kindred spirits. So today they're going to talk to us about entering a play space, because they work together at Tamara's after school program and in other places. I'm sure they'll tell us about entering a play space without an agenda. Oh boy.
Should we talk about how we know each other?
Yeah.
Okay. So Tamara and I met, it's been 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago now. We shared a classroom together. I like to call us co-teachers. We're co-teachers in a classroom.
Yes.
I don't think that there's a lead teacher and an assistant teacher. I think we're in there together. And our relationship and our modeling of listening to each other and being intuitive and flexible, I think really set the tone for our classroom that year.
So
But yeah, having that connection and that spark and that magic, I think really did set a really positive, safe tone.
I think we're also, if I could say, very same in the neurospiciness that we are?
Yes, I should say, yeah, I am diagnosed, not that self-diagnosis is in any way less than. I believe, like, if there's a self-diagnosis that you know yourself better than anyone. But I did go through formal assessment last year, found out at 40 years old that I am autistic and have ADHD. So learning all sorts of new and important things about ourselves. And Tamara and I kind of, I feel like we have a mirror a little bit where we can say, like, oh, we see similar things in ourselves. And that has helped us, I feel, be able to bridge to kids that are experiencing the world in similar ways. So
plus we have age difference.
And you know, and each of you approaches it differently because there's not one way, right? There's not one neurodiverse aspect. Every child, just like every child, whether they're neurodiverse or not, are different. And so
we all have a different recipe, right?
Exactly. And I really think everybody's on the spectrum.
Right. I mean,
at some level. Yeah.
I think that we all, like, if you look at the definition of diversity, we all have our own plot point and space. And I think knowing that sometimes our recipe can bump up against someone else's, and it doesn't make one right or one wrong. It just means we have to be willing to adapt.
Yes, exactly. And I think the trigger too, Tamara, and then I promise to let you talk. I think the triggers that each of us has is different too. And so what might trigger Lauren may not trigger Tamara. And so that's the other time when you have a team that is so in tune with each other, like both of you seem to be right now. When you have that team, it makes I don't want to say management, but it makes the interactions and relationship building with children better because you have a person who's not triggered by something this child might be doing when this teacher might be. And that having that relationship with each other is so helpful to children.
I remember a few times where it would just be, I need to tap out.
Yeah.
You do, it's fine. I got you. Right. Luckily, none of us fell apart at the same time.
Right.
But that's such a beautiful thing.
I think the idea of being held in a space where we were allowed in that sacred space of our classroom, like, to continue the metaphor, to bring the whole recipe into the space and know that we wouldn't just be tolerated, but that we would really encourage each other to run with the strengths and the presence that we're bringing into our space, our shared space. And I truly believe the kids saw that and felt like, I can bring my whole self and I will be respected and honored for all the pieces of me. And I think that is an important thing to have in a classroom, because that's not always the case.
No, it's not always the case. And children, just like at home, if they can feel tension at home, their anxiety increases, which is only going to contribute to whatever behaviors they use to sort of regulate themselves with that. And so when they can walk into a space that's supposed to be safe, where they feel respected and loved is a sometimes overused word, but respected and cared for in that space and respected for who they bring to that space. It just, all of a sudden, the whole classroom just does this. If you feel tension between the teachers, then everybody gets tense when there's not that kind of agreement. So the gift that you bring when you have someone that you're so in tune with is an amazing gift to children and to each other, right?
I think that they saw us co-regulating all year.
One of the kids said, one of my favorite times is when you guys would just laugh so hard and we would get giggles fits and they would just be like looking at us. Wow. But it was authentic. I think that's also the huge piece to this. You must be authentic so they can be authentic.
Yeah. And they're modeling, right?
Yeah.
They're modeling that for them, that, when I get stressed out, the way I get out of being stressed out is to watch a comedy so I can laugh. and giggle and that release is so helpful in managing that stress. And so then they think about, I was in a barbershop chorus for many years, and one of the warm-ups that the director did is we just laughed, and we laughed at different pitches up and laughed at different pitches down as part, and you felt so energized when you were done. It was truly an amazing way to leave everything that had happened before rehearsal outside that door and be able to be present.
When we're talking about release also, when we're talking about laughing, let's talk about how different everyone is about what is a release. I mean, I am the crier of the universe, right? And so I remember feeling ashamed about that when I was young, trying to suppress that. And so in the classroom, to me, it felt like it was beautiful to let a child cry and move them off to the side so they're not being focused on, and just sit with them. And you know, they just would look at you like, you're not going to stop me, or you know,
gonna tell me I shouldn't be crying, or there's nothing wrong, you're fine. You know, all those horrible things.
The phrase "you're fine" is my ultimate trigger.
Yes,
I feel like that is where our presence is so crucial, to not ask kids to be convenient. That is just my ultimate driving force, is that humans are, again, it goes back to the, like, I'm bringing my entire recipe, right?
Sorry about the background noise. Leaf blowers.
We're bringing our whole self.
Somebody was doing the tuba or something.
Yes.
Playing a tuba. That's what I thought. So I was like, oh, a tuba. I love to hear
this is real life, right? We gotta blow those leaves.
Very authentic.
But yeah, I think, you know, looking at a child and saying you're okay, that's the adult wanting that's us telling ourselves that. It's not really about the child at all. It's us self-soothing. So I think if we can take that time to always be checking our own nervous systems before we engage with a child, because it's not about us.
Right.
No, it's not. And, you know, it's so interesting how, and in my head, you know, with grandchildren these days, in my head, I have to say, you're okay, you're okay. You know, if I have to force myself to not say it, right? Wow. Because it immediately comes up when I'm terrified that they're bleeding or something. So, you know, because there's no blood at Nana's.
Right.
The children understand that there's no blood at Nana's.
Yes.
And so, and I always say that in the beginning, remember, there's no blood at Nana's. And they're like, oh yeah, right, no blood at Nana's. And so it helps them regulate a little bit when they're thinking, but it is a immediate, and I'm sure it's because in our memories, people say that to us. You're okay, you're okay, you're okay. And that is just so programmed deep into our memory templates that is the first thing that comes back, because that was our experience.
That's so interesting. I feel like my internal question now, and I didn't realize it till you said that, is, am I okay? I feel like when I feel anxiety coming up or something happens, there's a real stop and a question of a scan real fast. Is my body okay? Is my brain okay? Like, having the freedom to ask instead of assume that I'm okay.
And I've heard you ask other children, how are you feeling in your body right now? Like, that's really good for them to get used to checking in with themselves.
And it really is, and again, a great tool for them to use. You know, my stomach hurts, or my heart is, or I feel, you know, something going really fast. And that attunement to what they're feeling in their body really begins to help them understand how to de-escalate whatever they're in that hyperarousal continuum, wherever they happen to be. And I sometimes say to teachers, when you walk into the classroom, where are you?
Right. Right.
Where are you on the hyperarousal continuum?
Yes.
And what do you need to do for you to de-escalate? Because if you start escalating, children start escalating. And so then you're going to really have a bad day because of you, not because of them.
Right. That's so interesting. This is kind of, stick with me on this for a second, because I'm making a connection here. I just read this article recently about how most airline disasters are connected to the pilot and the co-pilot not communicating.
Oh, wow.
Not being willing to listen to one another, being scared of stepping on toes, the power dynamic. And I think there's a real connection to what we're talking about as far as regulating one another, being willing to, I don't know why fireworks are going off, but
I don't either, but there it is. That was beautiful.
I don't know.
Perfect timing of the hyper arousal.
Here we are.
Here we are.
Fireworks in the sky with the pilots. I don't know. But truly, I found that so interesting. And when you are in a shared space and you are in a position of power, which teachers and adults are in any space with a child, I think you have to check yourself and make sure that you are in a space to welcome feedback, to look at your partner where, you know, whatever your relationship is, things can go south really quickly when you're in a position of power if you are not willing to check in with who is beside you. And I found a real connection in that article that if you are not willing to have someone question you, have someone check in, the plane crashes.
Yeah.
And what does that look like? And how do we translate that into a classroom setting that we need to get ourselves right coming into a space so that we can co-regulate one another? So that, because all of these kids, like we've discussed, they are picking up on what is happening inside of our bodies, and we can't communicate effectively or have joy in a space and make good choices for how to fly this plane if we aren't willing to, like you said, check in, make sure that our static isn't too loud, you know?
Well, and I think the other big piece is that we cannot leave stuff at the door, right? That's the other big piece. You know, that I hate that. I hate it when directors say you need to leave your personal life at the door when you walk in. You can't do that. That's a totally unrealistic expectation that then brings on guilt and more anxiety to the teacher. And when I was directing, there was something that would happen in my personal life, and I would think I had left it at the door, right? That's because, you know, I'm the director, right? The director's tone sets the mood of the day, right? And so I would walk into a classroom, you know, to greet all the teachers in the morning to say, you know, what happened? Anything I need to check up with, follow up with, blah, blah, blah. And one of my teachers came up to me and said, "Are you mad at me?" And I went, "Absolutely not. Why do you think I'm mad at you? You're just not yourself today." And I said, "Oh, okay. So just know that this is something that has nothing to do with work that I thought I had left at the door, and obviously I didn't, because you can't leave it at
and
the
it's
door.
not wise to do so, because it'll pop up somewhere where you don't want it to. Always.
I think that's such a performative ask.
Oh yeah.
Like, are we clowns at a circus that we're being asked to perform what is not true to our life experience? I think that cuts off our access points to other people.
It does.
Be able to connect on being a human being.
And so what I did instead then is, if I was having one of those episodes, I would walk in the door and just say to teachers, you know, I'm probably not going to be myself today, but it has nothing to do with any of you. And that you could see them, you know, and I wasn't a tyrant, but it was, you know, you're not normal today. And I would say, I'm not going to be normal today. And that was accepted because it was more authentic. Instead of trying to hold it, back.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think it gets into the whole idea of energy too. How does your energy fit into this conversation of neuroscience and your nervous system and all these things? Because we are emitting an energy all the time. And if we haven't checked in with ourselves, the energy that someone else is feeling might be what that, you know, colleague was feeling in that moment is your prohibitive, I have to have it all together and I can't let them see my humanity. They're feeling that.
This is exactly another example. I'm always full of these like examples. So this year I have had a different teacher with me and it was a whole different ball game. So interesting. I was just like, I've had now 3 different teachers in that same classroom and completely different. The year that we spent together was amazing. So I was trying to like bring that into the classroom. So we're at circle time again, millions of times. And I was like, but we were at the circle and the teacher I was seeing signs that they were not doing well, but they weren't, you know, overt. But after a while, I actually just paused everything. I said, hey guys, I just wanted you to kind of take a look. I have this feeling, and I might be wrong. You tell me if I'm wrong, that our teacher is not feeling really well. And then they started to like tear up and yeah, I'm not doing that great. And I said, is there anything we can do for them to feel better? You know, and just, I wanted to bring that up because, you know, I felt that way sometimes too. And so it was just a way for the children to kind of check in and it worked really well. They were all like, it was just a moment where they learned a little something. And in fact, the teacher did too. Like, that's a thing you can do. Like, yeah.
The reading of the energy and like what because your body's always talking too, you know? So I think being willing to be present to read the things that are not being said.
I mean, it turned out their dog was sick or something. And, you know, all the kids, oh, my dog. And then it became a conversation. Well, I felt sad like that too. My dog died.
And a shared experience that built empathy, right? Instead of just saying, I don't know what's wrong with him today. You know, it's not my problem.
This was not part of the curriculum at all, right? It was a on the ground moment, where I decided to make that call,
which makes it authentic,
and
makes it internalized because it happened in this space in something that was authentically taking place in the classroom. And that's where we really go off the rails when we're trying to teach social emotional curriculum instead of just say, look at you. What's space telling you? Or how do you think that made, you know, her feel? How did she feel when so-and-so did that? I mean, those are the authentic things that make kids who are very egocentric begin to recognize that other people have feelings too.
And I think that goes into something that we talk about a lot when we get into this idea of coming into a classroom space and setting your agenda aside. I think something that you and I really value in a classroom space is authentic conversation and giving that space and time to grow and not putting a pin in it for 2:47 p.m. We will have authentic conversation. It's like giving that the air it needs to grow. What does it look like to sit with a child and have silences, have conversation, let them think, let them process, let them integrate, and have, you know, it's not what is it? Not show and tell. That's what I'm trying to think of. It's not show and tell where it's like this prescriptive thing where they're allowed to share for 30 seconds and then your time's up. How do we sit with kids and share our lives with them and them with us, you know, obviously in a developmentally appropriate way, like share our own life experiences with them in a way that grows their fund of knowledge. Like that is what pushes that learning forward in a really organic way, instead of write down a life experience and draw a picture. Like that verbal conversational learning is, I think, something that's hugely important to us.
We also did a lot of play together as teachers, and how that looked was that I would say, oh, I have this idea, and she would say, go with it. And so I'm like, okay. So then we tried this thing, and then sometimes it would be a smash hit, and other times it'd be like, not so much.
Yeah. It happened, right?
And go, well, and then we
pivot,
pivot, and the other person would kind of take over or whatever, and it was always fine.
Yes.
And the kids didn't feel anything about that.
Or we would do skits, which was my favorite.
Yeah.
Like, instead of being like, you guys, this is the 10th time I've asked you to put your boots away when you come in on a muddy day, you know, instead of all of that, where they have turned their ears off.
Exactly.
We do a skit about 2 different ways you could enter the room after recess, and where we come in and we're throwing our stuff and flopping around, and the kids are dying laughing. You know, the example of like one way to enter a room, and then showing the other way where we're remembering where the boots go, remembering where the coat could be hung up, because no one's going to feel great with dirty boots thrown all around. And, you know, how do we honor our own selves and our comfort level of like needing things to have their place in a classroom with 15 people? What do you think that they're going to remember more? The 10th time they've heard you complain about the boots, or Tamara and I doing a ridiculous like pratfall skit, show them like, how does it feel better to enter our space, where we still laugh about that, you know, like, where it's much more memorable if you connect joy and play to how we enter a space versus me being triggered by boots for the 10th time this week, you know?
So back in 1996, I think it was, there was a show that went all across the United States that I'm trying to remember who the big producer was, but he was the one on All in the Family, the son, I think, and now then he became a big, huge producer of film, and he got very much into how the brain develops. And so he worked with, I of course can't remember her name either, but a national, well-known, highly respected early childhood person. And they did this documentary that had Michael J. Fox in it and all these stars that were modeling and imitating, but modeling what to do or what not to do. And I wish I could remember what it was called, but we had groups of people all over the United States coming together and watching it together. It was really, really interesting. And then there was a documentary on play that was released a few years ago. So good modeling, right? With skits and laughter to get you to get the point that they're trying to make. And then there was another documentary, which of course I can't remember because I'm old, that was done with these fabulous teachers who, when there was a conflict in the classroom, they just said, and this is what I would do when I taught kindergarten, they would say, something just happened. And they would use puppets to talk about, to reenact what happened without children's names. What could we have done? How could we have, what else should we try? And so the kids are all raising their hands with all the problem solving you could do instead of doing whatever it was that happened. And they did that repetitively with kids over and over, and kids got conflict resolution immediately. Because again, it was something that just took place in the classroom, and they used puppets.
I love that idea of puppets because it takes the pressure off. It's like this neutral object where you're able to watch them work it out without it, you know, like you said, without saying, oh, I just saw, you know,
wasn't shaming
this to Molly or whatever. It's like, these are neutral characters where you're watching something play out, which I think is a big part of that magic for sure.
It really is.
That's
in my classroom, my college classroom, we have puppets, of course. You do in a demonstration classroom. One of them is a dragon, and one of them is a lamb. So when I use the puppets, the dragon never is the person who does the bad thing.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Right. So when we're talking about conflict resolution, the dragon is almost always the victim instead of the lamb being the victim. So I do that because I love dragons. But
Yes.
other, and the kids, my students laugh hysterically that the dragon is not the bad guy in this particular scenario. But it does work to get the point across that this is a way to teach children how to problem solve without the teacher telling them how to do it, right? So you've modeled, you've done all this wonderful stuff, and now they're able to spit back to you the strategies that the children could have learned,
right,
or could have used in that
particular. On that same idea, a big part of what we saw being effective was peer accountability versus us constantly reminding kids of our classroom agreements. I think that giving kids power to say, like, you are a powerful person in this space too. And if you see a friend that is doing something that breaks the group community agreements that we've made, here is how you go to that person, not to tattletale, not to say you're breaking the rules. How do we hold a peer accountable in a way that's respectful? But it does have so much more power to have a peer come to you to say, hey, I just wanted to check in. We agreed not to do X. And that's it. That's all they said. That's it. Walk away. And that's going to hold so much more power than Tamara or I, even in a really passive noticing, broadcasting type of way, that's going to hold a lot more weight with a child than an adult in a position of power reminding a child not to do something.
And it's shared responsibility, right? We're a community of learners. That's what we are here. So everyone needs to contribute and help remind our friends, right? So, when I was a teacher, we had 3 rules. You keep yourself safe, you keep your friends safe, and you keep our things safe, right? Those were the 3 rules. That's it. That's all we had. They had many other rules that they would share with new children who walked in the classroom. But those were my 3 rules that we had all agreed on, right? So it was really interesting how the children would go and say, oh, remember, we have to keep our things safe when children were throwing toys. And then so they took on that responsibility. So it became the shared community of learners instead of, the teacher being the disciplinarian, which no one ever wants to be. How many times do you want a child to come up to you and go,
right. One of my favorite things in keeping that respect for children is that I have changed almost everything I do into a question and honoring them with the idea that they know stuff, and for them to it puts them into their prefrontal cortex to be able to think about it instead of doing that ordering and telling and repeating, asking questions, and then it comes from a different place.
It does. And that repetition just makes those synaptic connections even bigger and bigger, so that becomes the first thing that they begin, that's sort of in the front of all these other options that they have. It just makes it makes so much more sense to children, and it makes the teacher's job so much easier. I said, how does it feel to be a disciplinarian at the end of the day? That you have had to resolve conflicts all day long, and you don't believe in timeout, so you've had to really get in there and do conflict resolution. How do you feel at the end of the day? They said, I'm exhausted. I said, yeah, anybody would be.
Yes.
Have to have that responsibility.
I had another example just a couple days ago where at the after school camp, of course, they've been at school all day. Right. So it's a group of boys that come in and they're already on the bus bumping heads. So when they came here, it all just came apart. And so they were trying to solve it by yelling louder than the other person. And I was like, oh. So I calmly brought one of the kids inside where I have a sliding glass door where I can still see what's going on, but it's sort of like a private room. So I said, we got the nervous system down a little bit. He was still agitated. I'm like, how can we get this? It seems like I still don't even know what you want, because I was concerned about you guys both, but you're yelling at each other. It's not clear. What do you want? And so he said, well, I just want the 3 tables, because they were doing a restaurant. I want the 3 tables because I was starting out and and then and I'm like, okay, wait, I just want to know, what are the things you want? Let's get a piece of paper. So I got a piece of paper. Tell me the things that you want. So I put his name at the top, and then the things that he wanted, and it was very particular. So I wrote that down. And then he said, well, I want that one tray that's black, and I want the one thing, but the box that goes with it makes it look like a computer. So I'm like writing these down. Then I said, okay, so these are the things you want. It's very clear to me. I see that. Why don't we take this list to your friend and let them look at it and see if any of these things can be worked out. And so right below it, I wrote 2 words. One was negotiation, and I put negotiate and I put a question mark next to it. And then the next one was flexibility with a heart next to it. I said, remember these 2 things when you show him this. So off he goes, and I'm like, who knows? This is just a tool I'm going to try.
Right.
And so within minutes, they were down. He was scribbling things off. They weren't arguing. The thing I noticed was that they were not looking at each other anymore. So those facial cues and that I need to be always angry at you, they were figuring it out on that paper. And it was like, was such a great thing, because within minutes, they had it all negotiated.
They had it all done.
And it wasn't me.
But what's beautiful about that I'm sure you realize that what I immediately thought is they were able to hold it together until they got to you, and then they lost it because they feel safe there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
They know that they can be their authentic selves, and that there's someone there that will help them, sort of defuse whatever it is that's happening. And I mean, that's a gift that not many children have, right?
Yeah.
So when Rod, my oldest, was Rod had self-regulation issues because he had sensory integration that he's 46 now. We didn't know about back then. But I knew he was really sensitive to the fabrics or the socks. He couldn't have seams in his socks. Oh my God, we were in Germany. I'm like mail ordering in socks without seams, right? And whenever we went clothes shopping, I'd have to put my whole arm in the pants and feel if there was anything that was off that would make him not wear it in the shirts, all those things.
Excuse me.
And so his regulation, if he wasn't comfortable, it was awful, right? And so it took time to recognize that, even though I didn't know what it was, it took time to recognize that these are the things, these are the tools in the toolbox as a mom that I can use to help him not get so out of control. So when, he would throw the most amazing tantrums. I mean, it was truly acting worthy of a tantrum. And so when he went to kindergarten, I was like this. I wonder how many days it's going to be, how many hours, and I never got a call from school, so it's like, we're like 8 weeks in, and it's parent teacher conferences. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm so scared. And so I walk up to the parent teacher conference and walk into the kindergarten room, and I'm just waiting for her to say, oh my God, what have you done to Rod? Blah, 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 blah. Rod is the kindest, helpful, sweet child. I wish I had 25 of him. I'm like, Rod Lawrence, tall kid. And she's like, he is a joy to have in class. But he held it together at school, but when he came home, he lost it.
Same thing here. Same exact thing. I remember the same moment, parent teacher conference, so worried.
Yes.
And then I was like, wow.
Wow.
Everyone just loved him. Right.
That makes me deeply sad, I have to say.
Mm,
Deeply sad, because how unsafe must he have felt there?
Yes.
mm.
Yes. But the teacher was lovely.
Yes.
I mean, he didn't have anything to say bad about the teacher. He just didn't feel safe. And it was
Right.
kindergarten, so it was his first year.
Yeah. Like,
But
it's hard.
yeah, I just remember I can still feel the anxiety I had.
Yes.
When I went to the first parent teacher conference.
Yes. I've
Expecting.
been there as well, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Craziness. Well, I can't even, so closing thoughts. I can't even tell you how amazing this has been, and you'll have to come back. I'm going to send you the January dates for 2026. But any final thoughts you want to share before we close out?
I guess I should just quickly say what I'm doing now.
Yes.
I didn't really say that. So I have, in the last couple of months, started my own business. It's called The Kindred Space. So I work as an educator and consultant, and I work mainly one-to-one with neurodivergent students and their families.
Nice.
And I provide a nervous system safe place to risk to learn. So we talk a lot about learning being a place of disequilibrium, where we're off balance when we're learning new things. How do we give a safety net for kids when they're feeling that vulnerability of learning? So that's what we're trying to do. And then I'm consulting with teachers and schools and families about how to make more inclusive spaces for neurodivergent kids. So that's
and I think that is such an important piece, because everybody has something. I keep going back to neurodiversity. Everybody has something. It just depends on the scale of how much of something they have. I swear to you, my husband is neurodivergent. I swear to you. So I have coping mechanisms that I use to help him cope, right? That I implement, because he can be dysregulated pretty. I mean, he's not. I mean, he's a wonderful husband. He's a fabulous husband. But everybody has times during the day or certain things that create that disequilibrium.
Right. And like we were talking about with that, everyone benefits from an emotionally safe environment.
Yeah.
There is not one person that doesn't benefit from that. So just like when we're talking, I know you mentioned that you have a trauma-informed background as well. Everyone benefits from coming in from that perspective too. So I think zooming out on this, only neurodiverse people will benefit from certain.
Everybody benefits.
Everyone benefits. So it's just kind of like, zooming out, getting a higher perspective on the nervous system and emotional safety and felt safety, how those really do. You're not going to go wrong with that with any human being.
And you can't. And the one thing especially with the hyperarousal continuum, if someone's already starting to escalate, you don't contribute to it. What can you do to de-escalate immediately? What can you do? Is this a child that likes to be touched? Can you, put your hand on the back of their shoulders or something and make them feel like they're safe with you? Can you, what is it that you can do? Can you steer them over to the sensory table and let them experience some sensorial things? What is it that this child needs that may not work for this child? The same thing with adults.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
Go ahead.
I just was going to say, I have a resource
You
that
have
I
to go.
That,
but you have to go because you're going to graduate.
I know. Last thing, I have a resource that I created that I'm happy to send over that people can download if they'd like. That is a dysregulation checklist.
Ooh.
You go through all the things. Mainly, the biggest thing I think is limit your words.
That's hard.
Limit those words and just give them the space they need. But I'm happy to send that over for people to download.
That would be great. And I'll stick it into the YouTube description. Wonderful. Yes. All right. Stay right there while I close this out. To learn more about IPA USA, please visit our website at ipausa.org. And until next time, keep on playing.